computer. And 1 and 2 and 3 are on air, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good part of day, whenever you are. Welcome to the largest and the fastest growing large-scale Scrum meetup. This one is based out of New York City, but has gone viral and global for a while now. We have a special guest today, and it's my pleasure to introduce him. His name is Cesario Ramos. He will be speaking to us about his personal experience of large-scale Scrum implementation at one of the large financial institutions. And he will probably, I don't want to steal any thunder from him, he will be talking about how less adoption and less experiments have improved the current organizational settings and dynamics that were in that place before he joined. But before he starts, I want to give a few words of a shout out to him. So Cesario, first of all, he started as an agile consultant and product manager at the company named Ethos. He was a hardcore developer and the lead software architect at Penn Analytical. It's another company. So he clearly comes from the know-how of product management, product development, and product, and product ownership. I'm sure in a way. Today, Cesario guides large-scale Scrum adoptions and training worldwide. In 2010, he actually founded his current company, Agilix. It's an international network organization that's present in different countries, especially in Europe, as far as I know. Over the years, Cesario also wrote numerous publications and books, such as Emergent, Lean and Agile Adoption for an Innovative Workspace. Cesario is one of the few and well-known large-scale Scrum trainers globally. I think we have a total of 22 or so people that teach less according to well-defined learning objectives and on par with standards. Cesario is also a professional Scrum trainer with the Scrum.org, a well-respected organization in the Agile arena. And he also organizes lots of less conferences and hosts Scrum book meetups and other meetups such as less recap days, etc. So with any further ado, I will be passing the Cesario and let him take away. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking. To ask a question, and even if you do, please raise your hand first. This session will be recorded, and I'm going to be pinging to you all in a second the link where it will be posted shortly after the event, along with the slides and other assets from Cesario. Okay. Without any further ado, Cesario, over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Gene, for such a nice introduction. Welcome, everybody. My name is Cesario, indeed. Going to share with you a great part of the keynote that we gave at the LESS conference last year in Munich. And my plan is to talk for, I don't know, around 35 minutes or so, and then use the rest of the time for Q&A. If there are any questions. I don't think we can try answering questions during the talk, but maybe that's not a good idea, but I'll leave that to Gene. If he can handle that and manage that, I would be okay with that.
Yep.
So first a disclaimer, in this talk I will only share things that were already shared before, or that you can also find publicly in the open space on the web, etc. So no NDA violations, as far as I am concerned with. So this is a picture of us just right after the keynote, and I gave this keynote in Munich with the people, with the key players actually involved in this. And you see Vaishal on the left, which is the IT manager. You see Nadine in the also a little bit to the left. She was what ING calls the tribe lead. And then we have Joris, which was an area product owner. And together we gave this talk, and we were super happy that it was over. We could finally go for beers. And so we took this picture. And it all started in 2018 or so. And this lady who took over the group, it was a 500 people group, and they were involved in developing a product, business lending, about offering business loans to corporate customers. And they had over 20 teams spread across 3 sites, 3 different countries, that is. And everything looked okay. And when she joined, she was really happy about leading this new group, having this new challenge. And after a couple of months, the first release was planned. And she noticed that it didn't go as she expected. And she came up with these observations that, well, her group said that the product would be released 2 months ago, but now, 2 months later, it was still not very, really completely deployed to production. And she was surprised by that. And that made her, gave her a couple of problems. And one of them was that she could not really reliably give forecasts to her stakeholders or to the customers, and that was not very comfortable. So she started having some sessions with the people. She set up meetings and invited all kinds of people from all over the tribe to try to figure out what's going on. How is this possible that we have these unreliable forecasts? How is it possible that we as a group cannot focus on the most important work? She was worried about that. And she tried to come up with solutions for that by engaging the people and having them come up with proposals. But eventually she tried, and she really couldn't come up with a proper answer that was satisfying to all of the parties involved. And one day she was talking to a director, and that director was at a conference where I was speaking a couple of weeks before that, and he said to her, maybe you should talk to Cesario and see if he can come in and maybe give you some pointers. And that's what happened. And I was invited there, and I started to observe. So to have a go-see, as I call it, to see what's going on, to visit meetings of teams, visit meetings of management, talk to product owners, talk to other people in the group to identify and see how work is working for them. And after a couple of days, I wrote a small email as a report, and the key observations that I want to share were these, and these are 5 parts of observations. Like they were working using a copy of the Spotify model. They had, for example, 23 product part owners and team backlogs. They were poorly aligned, for example. They were output driven, and also very important, they seem to have lots of branches in their code base, and so on. And I want to share with you in a little bit more detail these observations, and also then what we decided to do about them. So let's have a look first at the Spotify model and these single function line managers. So a thing I noted was that they were organized more or less like this. And what you can see here is a group of around 500 folks, and at the bottom you see DevOps engineers, and they are from the orange part. That's IT, let's say, and then the green ones, POs, are product owners, and CGE stands for customer journey experts, and they grouped these people into teams, but because of the Spotify sauce, let's say, they called these people squads, and each squad had a product owner who was playing the product owner of that squad, and each squad had a real purpose, and they were self-organizing, using sticky notes and all those agile things, and it just seemed very okay. And it was a mix, as you can see, from IT folks and business folks. And these teams were called also biz DevOps teams. So next to that, they had chapters. So they had IT chapters like a Java chapter or a testing chapter, but also the same thing they had at the business side. So they had business chapters. And these chapters were headed, I think most of you have heard similar stories. They were headed by chapter leads. So we had IT chapter leads, we had business chapter leads. And what I noticed was that these chapter leads had HR responsibility for the people in their chapter. So basically what they were single function line managers. So they would incentivize, or they would promote, they would encourage people to develop along a single function, let's say, for example, a single function career path, which is maybe not appropriate if you want to have cross-functional teams where people are encouraged to be a multi-skilled, for example, and learn more than one skill. That was super interesting. And then what I noticed also is that they had other meetings that were special for me at that moment in time. They had so-called POCLAC meetings. And POCLAC stands for product owner, which is the PO, and then the CL would be chapter lead, then the AC would be agile coach. And these meetings were about addressing team issues, like maybe conflicts within the teams, or coordination issues, or resourcing issues, so that they would take quite some responsibility away from the teams, especially if it came down to further development and resourcing, and they would try to manage it in these POCLAC meetings, and then this whole group they would call a tribe, and this was my first observation, which was pretty interesting at that point in time, that we have these squads and these chapter leads, and then we have this division of HR, let's say, responsibility of reporting lines. So we had reporting lines, for example, from the chapter leads. IT, DevOps people had a reporting line in the IT part. The business folks, the green people, had a reporting line in the green part. But they also, as a squad, reported, let's say, to the area product owner, which in this case you can see Joris or Nadine, even as a tribe lead, and this gave a rise to all kinds of site steering issues, where from a product point of view, the squads needed to work on topic A, but because of this HR and dual responsibility, dual reporting lines, parts of teams are also encouraged to work on other work, and this gave rise to lots of conflicts. Another thing that was that I noticed was these 23 teams, and I thought, wow, you guys must have lots of products if you have 23 product owners and 23 uh, uh, um, um, product backlogs. And another thing was that they had this special team, a connecting the dots team. And I tried to figure out what that was. So I started talking to the product owners and the chapter leads and so on. And what I noticed was that they had a classical organizational setup that we know as copy paste scaling, and that most of the features that needed to be developed, most of them, it ranged per team from 30 to 80% of the features of each of these squads. If they wanted to develop those and put them into the hands of the customer, they would need at least one other team, 3 to 8 out of 10 times, to be able to ship that feature. And because of that, as you might expect, if the tribe lead wanted to deliver the red feature, and there was all these dependencies, then miraculously somehow these parts that needed to be done by the teams needed to be organized and needed to be developed in more or less at the same time, so that they could be integrated at the same time. And as you can expect, what I noticed while I was studying this work and talking to the users, talking to the teams, that a lot of the work that needed to be done was, because of the unbalance of it, was the group was unable to actually ship that in one sprint or two even, or three. As you can see here, the yellow feature is the second feature that the group wanted to develop. But unfortunately, the yellow feature cannot be completed because in this case, team 3, we would find. Team 3 is already at full capacity. It's already fully working on the red, on their red part of the red feature, and they cannot take any more work on. So this yellow part needed to be done later by that team, and as no other team could help them. And because of the massiveness of this, there were many of these pieces of work that didn't distribute evenly among the teams, and needed to be managed somehow, in another way, and they had it, and that's why how I connected the other meetings for that. They had these connecting the dots team meetings to handle this, to help the team product owners coordinate and align on all this work that was being developed out of sync from each other. And the POCLACs also contributed to managing these dependencies. And the organization became a little bit complex, and work was a little bit opaque, progress was a little bit opaque, and so on, etc. So it was not very interesting from a overall tribe perspective, how this was organized. And next to that, as each of the teams were locally making their plans, what's best for them, the overall performance of the group went down. Especially when I noticed that the goals was of course to increase velocity, the evil velocity, as I call it. The teams were increasing their velocity, but the problem, of course, was in this case that between 30 and 80% of their velocity is not a feature velocity, but is a waste velocity. So if they would increase their velocity, which the agile coaches and the product owners were focused on, then they would increase only the rate of waste that they would put into the system, which was very ironic, I think. So the higher the velocity of the teams, the more waste, the more work in progress, the more parts of the features would be out of sync and needed to be managed. And this was getting out of hand, as I noticed while talking to these people. So this was not a very good place to be in for the tribe leads. So another thing that I noticed is this, as you can see. So they had clear purpose, but Nadine was not able to focus on one or two things with her whole group, as a lot of teams could not actually react or work on the most important work. So another thing I did, I studied how this work actually was being processed within this tribe. And I started to look at, well, what kind of features do we expect to develop? What kind of chunks of big functionality do we expect to develop the next 6 to 12 months? And let's use that to identify which parts of your group, which parts of your tribe are actually needed to do that work. And here you can see an anonymized view of that result. And what you can see here is all the squads, and and the colors actually mean that we identified areas of functionality in those features that we needed to develop for the coming year. And for example, the blue, if you see a lot of teams here who are 100% blue. This meant that in order to develop those features, these teams, these blue teams, if they are completely blue, they would be needed 100% of the time. So in each feature, each of these teams needed to do a part. And the same for the orange ones. So the orange ones was a different set of functionality we discovered, but the teams who have an orange part, they would, for example, the team 5, that team would be needed around 70% of the time for all the features in the orange part, and 25% only for features in the blue part. And actually, what this indicated is what I already discovered with these parts of the feature that were being developed out of sync, was that in order to increase the focus, in order to be able to focus with a larger group of teams on a common goal, on common features, we would need to group the tribe in a different way. We would need to redesign it in such a way that the squads that were highly dependent, like the orange ones and the blue ones, that they would have to work off of one product backlog, for example. And this is the direction the data was pointing us. And the last of the observations that I want to share is this. So because of the fact that the teams were mainly focused on delivering their stories, their feature parts, they had to steer on outputs instead of on product outcomes, and this gave rise to lots of side steering and a lot of focusing on locally performing as a group, as a team, instead of focusing on the bigger picture. And for example, performance at that time was tracked at the level of 3 months iterations, and the squads would have to give a plan about what they would think they would deliver, what features or what stories and what feature parts they would deliver in the next 3 months, and then they would track performance based on that. What's the percentage of actually delivering what was promised, which of course took away focus on real product outcomes, took away focus on doing what is maybe better for the overall group instead of what is maybe better for you as a team. So these were all issues that we had that came from the GOSI. So we had lots of discussions about that with the leadership. And in order to prepare for the future, they wanted to create a design, a tribe design that could also solve a couple of these issues. And these four were the most important ones. So how could we be more reliable as a tribe? That was a key one. So we could communicate better to our customers and to our stakeholders. And also, because this was multi-site, we wanted to be able to focus all teams in all the sites, and these were different countries, on the most important thing at the tribe level. And this meant, for example, that if you were in country A and the most important thing were features in country B, then even if you were in country A, you should understand customers of country B, you should understand maybe specific systems that they only use in country B, etc., so that you could actually work independently of the country, but actually optimize for the larger product. So these were all challenges that we had to solve, and that were very hard to solve in the current Spotify copied approach. So what we did is we had to.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you explain what you meant by side steering in the slide behind?
And side steering, yes. So side steering would what I mean by that is because the squads and the people in the squads had dual reporting lines. On the one hand, they would report to the tribe lead, for example, or to the area lead, which is a business person. And on the second line, they would, if you were an IT person, you would also report to the IT chapter lead, which had HR responsibility over you. So therefore, if the IT chapter lead, for example, had some interesting stuff that he wanted to do, then he would be able to say, well, I also want you to work on this. And then if you were a squad member, you had two, let's say, people to report to.
Got it.
And that would result in a lot of side steering.
Thank you.
That was the part. And that came from that design decision to assign HR responsibility to the chapter lead, which is not a good idea if you want to optimize for, if you want to be able to create focus at the overall product level. So what we did is we needed to redesign the system, in this case the tribe, and we used this this analysis of how the work is working, and we used the teams, the blue teams. They would need to be redesigned because each team would only be able to focus on a part. So we started with 7 teams, which were the blue ones, and we said, well, 7 teams, maybe you need to redesign, you need to reconfigure yourselves into 7 new teams, but it would be preferable if each of these 7 teams can cover most of the systems, most of the components to start with, because in the end we would like each team to be able to pick up any item that will come up on top of this backlog of this area product backlog. So we had self-designing team workshops and those kinds of things. in order to kick that off. Another thing we did was we did not use co-located teams, which is we prefer that in LESS to have co-located teams. But if we would have co-located teams, that would make it harder for teams to learn about systems in other countries and customers in other countries. So we had this trade-off, this between two evils actually. One is we have co-located teams, but then it's very hard for them to learn about systems in other countries. Or we have dispersed teams, so teams from both or all the three countries mixed together. So then they are able to pair and to do mobbing and to learn from each other on a daily basis. But then they would be in different locations. And this was pre-COVID, so it was pretty hard. And it still is, of course, to create teams which are dispersed across locations. But we decided to not use co-located teams because the biggest gain was to learn really quick, and we were willing to pay the price for that on the short term. And another thing, we had these 17 branches, and it turned out that now that we identified these three areas of functionality within the larger product, it didn't make any sense to have these 17 branches. And we decided to reduce that over time because that was a big challenge. And eventually we brought it down to 3 or 4 branches at the time when we were talking at the conference, with the goal to reduce it to 1 branch, so that each team would, if they would write code, they would check it into the trunk every day, so that we would better know what our real progress was, and we would better know if there were any conflicts with whom we needed to coordinate in the team, so that we could create this conditions for this emergent coordination to take place. And this was not possible before because we had 24 or 23 product owners, and each of them was locally optimizing. So it was tried before, but they didn't manage until then because it was very hard to align all of these three backlogs, all of these three 23 product owners to take time to actually reduce the branches. But once we flipped to this first area, this PO put this CI item on top of the product backlog for a couple of months, next to items of business value, of course. But every sprint, a big amount of effort was put into reducing these branches, increasing the transparency of progress and increasing the need, the conditions for the teams to coordinate themselves. So just share a little bit more about how we worked, and then I think we should go to Q&A. So what we did was Belgium and Holland is close to each other. It was about 300 or 400 kilometers, which is peanuts for United States measures. So every sprint would end in Amsterdam, the first one, for example, and then the next one would end in Brussels. So everybody would be one sprint in Brussels, and the other end of the sprint, everybody would move to Amsterdam and so on. And that's because then we could at least be this whole day together. And in that day, we did the usual things that you know from Scrum, from sprint review until sprint planning, until retrospectives. And in the beginning, just 2 things I want to share still is the people, of course, they were used to being measured on effectiveness, on efficiency and on utilization. And one of the things that they said initially was, well, this is stupid. why am I refining with 7 teams the same items? Why am I doing that? I'm refining items that I probably will not pick up. And other people are refining items that they don't really know, but I know. So why are they refining it? This was not very efficient, and it is not very efficient, of course. But it was important to keep reminding the people, especially in those earlier phases, that although you know it, for example, because you have been working on that for the last three years, do your team members know it? Do the other squads know it? So if we want to be flexible at the tribe level, we have to invest in learning so that multiple teams will eventually be able to pick up a large set of the features that will be on top of the product backlog. So these were issues that we had, especially in the beginning. And here you can see this is an area, sprint planning, of the blue area, to be precise. And what he is doing here, he's saying, what's going on? Why hasn't anybody picked up this item here? And the situation was, for example, what you can see in this picture, you can see here this pink one. These pink things are the top of the product backlog, where we worked on with 7 teams at this moment in 2019. And at sprint planning, the squads would go and pick the items that they wanted to work on. And as a result, for example, we would see this after the teams picking the items. And this is interesting. So what we saw was, well, the teams picked up the most important items because on top are picked. And then at the bottom, they picked up the bottom ones, but the middle ones, they didn't pick up. So the teams preferred to pick up items which were of lower value than the middle ones. And these became the pearls, the opportunities for coaching. And we would point out and say, hey, what's going on here, right? This is what yours is doing here. What's going on here? How come we don't pick up these items which are of higher value? And then the process of changing the mental models, changing the thinking that it is okay to pick up items which you as a squad cannot do very efficient. And we are willing to invest in that. But they are higher value, so please pick them up. And then we invest now in learning. We know you will do it slower, but eventually this will give us the speed and the flexibility, the adaptability that we require. So please do not pick lower value items that you can do very efficient, because we will only be stuck in the same place where we are now. And this took, of course, time to get used to. But eventually, one team started to do that, and then another team started to do that. And then these teams would then challenge the other teams who would not dare to pick up items which they were uncomfortable with. And eventually, this became a normal thing to do. So to close it, to have some time for Q&A, some insights that we wanted to share was, it's very important to become more reliable first if you want to be able to steer at the tribe level, and by reducing the branches, by creating the focus, by eliminating fake product part owners, and having the teams understand the outcomes that we need to achieve and why we're doing this. This made us go slower at the team level, but in the overall level, actually, this made us maybe go faster, but it made us for sure more predictable, more reliable, which was a key a key item. And another thing I want to point out is the third bullet. The teams were worried that, well, now that we're going to work in this 23 squad product group, and we started with the 7 in one area, we will lose autonomy. We will have less autonomy. And they were very, very worried about that. And of course, it's true. If you work in larger groups, there's more things you need to agree on, or more things you need to align on. But we discovered that the autonomy is important, but the key is the tuning. The key is what can you do so that the teams are tuned with each other, aligned with each other. That comes at the cost of autonomy, but the tuning actually gives more freedom and less stress because of less and less dependency management that's needed, and less stress about waiting for another team to do their part so that you can finish your part and actually see if it works. So eventually the teams were pretty happy with this reduction in autonomy. And the other ones, maybe we can talk about that if there's questions on that. But you can read about this in these 2 papers, and I noticed that Jean will share it with you. So I just want to close and start the Q&A session based on the things I said.
Okay, Cesario, first of all, thank you for giving this nice, very great talk, I should say. So there are a few questions in the queue. We'll probably start with those because they came in first. And the link that Waldemar shared, I think that's the one you're referring to. I'll add it to the assets that I'll be sharing later. So the first question that was posted, actually, there are quite a few. Do you want to just read those and pick them up at your own pace? Because it seems to be...
I can do that, yeah. Let me find...
Andrea, yeah, from Andrea, Q1. Well, or just pick and choose whatever makes most sense.
I'll just start. Let me find it. There's the chat box. So I'll start at the bottom. Is that okay?
Yeah, either way, yeah, works for me.
Or maybe I should start at the top. Maybe that's more fairer. Q1. Any analysis that looked at work item. Whoa. Any analysis that looked at work item flows per type of work.
If you don't feel you can interpret, just, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, maybe the person who wrote that question can maybe clarify.
I can go ahead and say it in a very simple way. Was there any analysis that was done on the workflow of items across these 17 teams? You showed different colors, blue, orange. I showed there were other ones, with different work items. It was yellow, green, red, to illustrate the case. Was there any analysis that tried to analyze the flow?
I think I understand a little bit what you're trying to say. So what we did is we just took the plan for the next 6 months to a year, all the features that we needed to develop, at least we thought we needed to develop. And we played those features in the current organizational design, in the current Spotify organizational design. And what we did is we identified which organizational elements, or in this case, which of the squads needed to do a part for each of these features. So the analysis is done based from the outside in, so from what the customers want from us. And then we discovered in the blue case, in the blue area, if you can see, that all these teams are 100% needed for the features. So for 100% of the features, all these teams need to do something. So it would be stupid not to contain them in the same area. You see, it doesn't make any sense to give them separate product backlogs in this case, because a feature spans these 7 items 100% of the time. A feature spans these 7 teams 100% of the time.
There, you may want to, so thank you. So you may want to just pick and choose because questions are coming in. So
Okay.
pick
Okay,
one.
how did you get buy-in and collaborate with leadership? Okay, how were they actively involved? So the leadership would be the tribe lead, which is board -1, which is Nadine in this case. So it was her that asked me to come and join and to have a look. So when I studied, I presented the data. She had these challenges, and we had various sessions, also with leadership from the other countries, about what would be the organizational design if you wanted to be able to develop in both countries, if we wanted to be able to focus the squads on the highest value items, and we came to the conclusion that that the approach of having areas and having these groups, these teams work off one product backlog, focusing on one defined value proposition, that would likely make it possible to achieve those goals. So it was a top-down decision before we started to implement it. Now, the data, of course, we gathered, and the problems we gathered, the GoSee data came from interaction with the teams, of course. Another question, maybe.
Yeah, take another one, maybe from another person, just to be fair.
Well, I don't see the I can see the persons. Yes, you're right.
Just from you.
So is there any, was there any old mainframe involved? Yes, there were mainframes involved, absolutely. Just like in any good old bank. And these were especially problematic. Now, we have to figure out what the percentage of times is that these mainframes need to change something when we are developing new features. And in the case of the blue areas, the mainframe, for example, let me try to share the screen again so I can give you an example. Yes, I'm going to share my screen again so I can point you to an example. So if it's okay, you should be seeing these teams again with the circles. So if you look at team 16, for example, I'm not saying it's a mainframe team, but it could be. You can see that if this was a mainframe team, you can see that they are only needed, I don't know, let's say that is 5% of the, if you look at all the features that we need to develop in the blue area, that mainframe was only needed 5% of the time. So in that case, we have to make the trade-off. Is it worth to include that in the group or not? You see, or do we handle this as an exceptional case? And then we take the burden of coordination problems, etc. And we, in the initial, in Munich, last year, we made that choice. So we optimized for the work that we had most of, which would be these blue teams 100% of the time. And we would have excluded team 16, which would be a COBOL team, for example, from this blue area. They would probably be in the gray area. Hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, pick another few.
Okay, I'll just pick randomly, so don't be angry at me. Are these joint sprint planning meetings? Are these joint sprint planning meetings or PI meetings? Yeah, so these are joint sprint planning meetings. This is not a PI meeting. It's just the less sprint planning that you know from less, where the teams, the 7 teams or per area, just pick the items that they want to they want to work on in the first part of that meeting. And then in parallel, they will create their own sprint backlog. And during that, we will discover some dependencies, maybe if there are, and then we turn them into opportunities to work together as all the teams work in the same sprint towards the same objective. So there's no such thing as dependencies. If a team has a dependency with another team, then that's a great opportunity to work together. And we want to discover that during sprint planning. So it's very different from PI in that regard. One more then. Did you use any particular principle when deciding the priority? Yeah, so when deciding the priority of the features. Now the priority of the features, this is a business decision. And techniques, I can share some techniques. We used, for example, impact mapping to talk about, to discover that. And the problem was, of course, that to work on the highest value features, it meant that a lot of some teams would, some components in this case, some squads in the old setting would have very to nothing to do, as for example, the features are blue. If you were an orange team, well, you probably have nothing to do. So that this actually create the conditions that the orange team would need to learn blue features instead of orange features, instead of picking up orange features which were of lower value. And this created this big learning obstacle, which was very hard in the beginning. So I can share a short slide which I skipped, but I have for you, if you, to make this point a little bit more clear. So let me, I'm just struggling a little bit with my slides and so on. So for example, this would be like this. So we just worked on what we thought was most important. And this came from an impact map. And that's it. And if your team, your squad was not very good at that, it's bad for you, we would invest, and we would be willing to, and we did invest in learning so that you could actually work on that. So we moved from an outcome, an output-driven approach to an outcome-driven approach. So we don't really care about the stories that you can pick up efficiently. We don't really care about that. We want you to work on the most important stuff. And that that came at the overall product level and no longer at the team level was that decided. And that was a big help for her.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Cesario, we have a T-minus 2 minutes. So,
yes.
Questions I got in private. So one I'm going to kind of answer almost on your behalf because I will take I'll execute my right to share your information with others. Some people are asking how to get a hold of you if needed. So I guess your website would be, LinkedIn would be the best way to do it. Yeah.
Yes, LinkedIn is always
I'll
a
just
good way.
Yeah. And the second question came through. So let me just paraphrase it. It came to me privately. Here in the United States, companies are very strongly influenced by large consultancies that come in and unpack and install these large, monolithic, cumbersome, so-called methodologies, right, or scaling solutions such as Spotify and others.
Yes.
Do you have experienced the same thing in Europe? I mean, this sounds like it's like fighting a giant. I'm kind of paraphrasing what's written. So, what's your take on this? Why there is such a huge trend of, falling for these unpack, copy, paste?
Yeah, I think it's the same. I don't know, but I surely see that at my customers when all my large customers who are doing this did a copy of a model of somebody else, and in the banking, especially this bank, but all banks, of course, because this bank is an example. They copied this Spotify model, and this is done at board level by consultancy firms who do strategic coaching and strategic consulting. But the problem, one of the key issues is, which I didn't cover, is that the value is not in the model itself. Because as I try to explain in this example, the value is not in that instant moment in which you take the picture and copy that to your own organization, even if you are Spotify, which you are not, even if it would work, which it doesn't, you see, because you're not Spotify and you have a specific context. The value is in the journey that let's say Spotify took from the moment they started working and discovering and unlearning lessons and replacing them with new lessons. So that's what changed mental models. That's what changes culture, because one way to look at culture is lessons learned. So if you take a snapshot of a moment in time and copy that model, you're missing out on the important part, which is the journey. So in this case, they did a similar thing. And when I came in and I did these observations, it turned out that they were not agile at all, you see, and they had to start learning again. They had to start unlearning all these things that were in place and replace that. So I think this is, at my customers, at least in Europe, this is very common.
Thank you. Thank you for this. We had just at the hour. I want to be conscious of everyone's time and yours also, Cesario, because time is coming up for you to, I guess, to go to dinner. So I would like to wrap this up. I know there's some unanswered questions. Some of the private requests were sent to me. If I could zap and share publicly some of the outstanding questions, and I'll try to do so. I'll just strip everything that's private and leave only public comments. I'll make it available at the link that I shared before. Let me ping this again to everyone. So your information will be there as well. I'll pick it up from you shortly, Cesario, as well as the recording that we're doing as we're speaking now. So for me personally, thank you very much for coming out on Sunday night, for you entertaining us here. Most of us are here in the States or further away from the sun, where the sun rises. So for us, it's the morning. Thanks again. Maybe we can have you back here once again if you want to at a later point, or just figure out how to interact. Thank you everyone for joining, folks, and asking your questions. Great interaction. I will I'll make everything public and available to you soon. And please keep coming back. Hopefully we can have more entertaining moments here at Let's Meetup virtually for now. Stay safe, healthy, and hey, Jim, good to see you always, as always. And David. Hey guys, all the best. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Gene, for setting up. Cesario, thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.